The fact is we waste an immense amount of opportunity. And, what would you do as a business owner? What would you say if someone proved over half of the leads that your company receives just simply get wasted, despite all the lovely money you spend on marketing and promotion to try and bring them in? What you'd probably do is fire somebody. And I wrote an article in Style of White, it's been syndicated in a number of other publications as well, on that very subject. This is actually in the current issue that's out. And it goes into it in a little bit more depth. But it's real. If you go back to any of the audience that was sat in this room back in 2008 when I presented when Lakeside first opened, you will have seen that statistic. And out of every 13 inquiries received by a company, only 7 are responded to effectively. And in 2008, that was a terrible figure. It didn't mean they weren't responded to. They weren't responded to effectively, so maybe they weren't prompt with getting information out. They weren't particularly good at the follow-up. But in 2008, we saw that as really, really bad, and it was. But actually, it's recently been updated, and it's now worse, not better. So much for progress. And the figures are awful. Up to 64% of leads never even get contacted. No one even gets in touch. What a waste. Less than 27% of income inquiries are actually spoken to. And the big reason for that is email. The internet's killed it, this personal communication. I was working with a client on the mainland a few months ago in one of their sales support centres where they had half a dozen people that were following up on inquiries. And I was sat with one sales guy and he was just frustrated. He was banging the desk. And I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "I've emailed that guy 6 times and he's still not come back." And I said to him, "Well, hold on, maybe email's not the best thing for him then. Have you thought of picking up the phone?" And he looked at me horrified, as if suggesting to pick up the phone was taboo. And it is a problem today. It's a problem with some of the younger people. They're so used to social media. My daughter's texting, it's so fast. I'm there carefully pressing each button and my predictive text is still getting it all wrong. And they're not even looking, just going. So, it's the medium they're used to, but people have forgotten about actually picking up the phone and talking to real people. And it makes a difference, and that's why that figure is so appalling. A salesman on average makes 1.3 attempts to contact someone before they just give up and carry on. That's no good. You've got to be persistent. Just because they don't pick up the phone if you do phone them or respond to an email doesn't mean they don't want whatever it is that you're selling. It's just that timing is not appropriate for them. But we waste so much opportunity because of it, lack of persistence. And on average, it takes companies nearly 47 hours to follow up on an inquiry. And if you just think about that, just imagine if you went into the Vodafone shop in Newport on a Wednesday morning and said, "Hey, I want to buy a new phone and a new contract." They said, "Absolutely fine, can you come back on Friday, please?" You'd probably say, "Forget it, I'll go somewhere else." But that's actually what we're doing so much of the time. And why is it important? Well, it's important because at the end of the day, business goes where it's invited. If you don't ask for it, if you don't invite it, it won't come to you. And it goes to those that ask. But more importantly, if we don't, it creates a bad perception. They think we're not interested in their business. And therefore that reflects on us. And that negativity can stay with you for an awful long time. These things stick with people, these first impressions. It takes you seconds to create a really bad first impression, years to try and overcome it, no matter what you try and do. If we don't service them, our competitors will. And actually that has a double effect because it's one less for us and it's one more for them. So it's not a simple one-to-one relationship. It does us twice as much harm as it need do. Few companies can afford that waste and that churn, particularly on the Isle of Wight. We don't benefit. On the mainland, you have what are called transients. So if you work in a geographical area, there's always transients coming through, or you can just expand your catchment area very easily. You can't do that on the island. No matter which direction you go in, after a few miles, you will hit the coast. Your feet will get wet. That's the end of the Isle of Wight. There are only 140,000 people living here. There are only so many tourists that come over. So if you have a high rate of churn, you will eventually just get through the opportunity that's available to you and then wonder, why your business is suffering, why you're now having to reposition yourself, rebrand yourself, remarket yourself to be something that you just weren't in the first place. So we can't afford it from a business perspective. Going back quickly helps us because we get this thing called presence detection. Everything in my world has a name, and some of that is because it's easier for me to remember and sometimes easier for the clients to remember, and it makes it a bit more fun. But presence detection is really important. If someone's just sent you an email and you go back reasonably promptly, the chances are they're still sat at their computer to see your email coming back in. If you leave it 2 days, they may not be. Who here can easily remember what emails you sent 2 days ago? So what happens is they forget 47 hours later when you bother to go back what it was they actually inquired about in the first place. So the benefit you get is presence detection. If they've just sent you an email and you go back quickly, chances are they're still sat there. And equally, if they just phoned you and you go straight back, the chances are they're still at their desk, they're still by their phone to take that call. It develops very positive mind share, and we will touch on mind share a little bit later. But mind share is really, really important. Creates the wow effect. If you go back quickly, people think, wow, that's great. They value my business. There's a sense of urgency. They want to do business with me. And therefore, people will engage with you more fully because you created a very good first impression. And it creates competitive advantage, puts you ahead of the rest. Because if you go back quickly, the reality is your competitors won't have done that because you're better than them. And therefore, you'll capture that business early. And it's real. I'll give you a very good and personal example. Working with an IT company, not PC Consultants on the mainland, that company had 3 people in sales. And I spoke to their sales director and said, how good are you at capturing all the opportunity that comes? They said, we're great, we're an IT company, we've got a really good CRM system, everything goes on the system, I can monitor it, I can see the stages in the sales cycle, you know, we're really good at this stuff. So I said, that's fine. Later on today, when everyone's gone, and let's just have a look around the office and let's just see what we can see. And we did that, and it got to 5:30, 6 o'clock, and we walked around the office. And again, only 3 people in the sales team. And we found post-it notes stuck on computer monitors, business cards that were in trays by the side of the desk, half-written notes on notepads, all of which were clear opportunities. And the next day we spoke to the sales team and got them all together and raised some of these. And they said, oh yeah, that was the guy I spoke to at that networking event last week. I haven't had a chance to go back to him yet. Or, oh yeah, they phoned yesterday, but you know, just as they phoned, I was doing something else, so I made a quick note and I haven't had a chance to go back. Lots of good reasons for it. But as Winston Churchill said back in the war, he said there are 2 reasons for everything. There's a good reason, and then there's the real reason. So people had a good reason, but actually the real reason we weren't just capturing this stuff, we weren't taking advantage of it. And what we were finding is there were lots of opportunities being lost. But if you looked at that in real bottom line commercial terms, their average order value is about £1,500. And they typically convert about 1 in 3 inquiries that came in, which isn't a bad statistic. And their sales cycle was about 6 weeks. So if you take that, you're talking about 18 non-captured opportunities at any particular point in time. That's worth a potential of about £27,000. And if you take that down, that's about £9,000 in reality. But of course, you're going to repeat that about 8 times a year. So we're not talking about half a dozen business cards or the odd post-it note. What we're actually talking about is £72,000 of your subsequent year's future lying around people's desks at any one time. And that was a good IT company, and they really thought they had it nailed down. But we are all guilty of this. And again, you've got to ask yourself, how good are you at capturing opportunity and also keeping your promises when you're going to go back to someone?